So the box pleat kilt is ready for another fitting, and the reason why I'm asking for a second fitting, I'll do a bit about that shortly. So I've turned to making the dress shoulder plate that the customers already asked for, had also ordered. I believe I've covered this elsewhere, but my first step was to take an existing shoulder plate, because I have a couple of dress shoulder plates back from when I piped for weddings and funerals and such. So I used that plate, held at the waist where it would be fastened, and then draped over the shoulder, and I adjusted it back and forth so that the fall was the most pleasing to the eye, because if it looks too short, which is probably historically more accurate, or if it's too long, they both look kind of foolish. So to my eye and other people's eyes. So I established that length. I cut off a piece because it turned out to be 57 inches. Quite a bit shorter than my shoulder plate, and this chap is taller than me, so I'm starting to wonder if perhaps my shoulder plate's perhaps a little too long for me. I should take a look at myself from behind, because yeah. So I talked about, so I cut it to length. I teased out the fringe on the edge, and just with the head of a needle. And then I spent some time playing with the pleats, because the top part is pleated like this and held with a couple, like 3 rows of back stitching, and then is allowed to just fall after that. Because I had an idea about box pleating the shoulder plate, because I box pleated the kilt, and I made it up several ways, and I wasn't satisfied with how any of them looked, because to replicate the appearance across the back of the kilt, the plaid would be not very wide, which doesn't matter, but quite thick, which does matter, because as I've said elsewhere, he's going to get a kilt coat tailored after this, and if the shoulder plate was too much volume, too much depth, thickness, it would affect the fit of the coat. So 2 solutions, because you never wear this without a coat, or at the very least a waistcoat. This is a very, very formal, about as formal as may be. This is like white tie formal. So 2 solutions. One, you tailor the coat to allow for the added thickness, and we've covered asymmetricity in the body already. Well, if you've got this fabric lump on one side, you're gonna have to tailor the coat to fit it. The problem is, how often do you wear this? Not as often as you're just gonna wear the coat with the kilt. So if you tailor this, you tailor the coat to fit the bulge, and you take the reason for the bulge away, the coat isn't going to hang right, it's not going to drape right. So I tried 3 or 4 ways, and they didn't really look right, and B, they were too thick. So I've gone with a standard knife pleat, but it shows basically the same pleated effect as does the kilt, and it's broader. It's about 6 inches and quite a bit thinner, so it distributes that thickness, distributes the bulk of material over a wider spot, so you can tailor a coat, and so the coat will look equally good with the plaid or without it. Basted it up, gave it a press yesterday. This morning I've run 3 rows of back stitch over it. I guess I can take these bastes out now. And then put the top band on, and again, using the top strip of the cloth, one edge is a selvage, so you can do this. The raw edge is tucked under here, and the selvage is visible here. But that's quite neat. That's a neat job. I like that. I'm not going to waste your time listening to me yammer about other subjects while I pull that basting out. But in any case, so I've basically finished the bottom, the top, what do you want to call it? The base of the plaid with the hooks. I've sewn the hooks to the kilt. Now to make the front fall that hangs down the front of the kilt. As we see, look at me not being prepared for the video. As we see with this one that I've done in Ancient Stuart. So cut it, folded it, fringed it out a little bit, and then sewn it to the cloth, and then sewn a matching placket so it matches the tartan of the rest of the plaid. And that also provides an extra bit of thickness. That's where we will attach the plaid brooch. And later on, because, and again, I'm repeating myself, but if we push the pin of the plaid brooch through the coat, we ruin the front panel of the coat very quickly indeed. If we put a couple of loops on the coat in the manner that we see on this kilt jacket, these loops are here for the days that I wear my medals. We could make two vertical ones up here for the plaid, the pin of the plaid brooch pin to stick through. But when you're not playing it, you're going to see these very visible loops, and people's eyes are going to be drawn to it, and they're going to be thinking, what on earth is that? So what my solution is that when because he's coming in on Saturday, the plaid will be finished, the kilt will be just about finished. At that point, I will sew two hooks onto the plaid with the hook facing up as we see it here. Arrange the plaid so that it drapes nicely on the coat and that the front is falling down the required amount. And then I'm going to sew two eyes to match where the hooks are, and that'll be hidden by the collar. So when you're not wearing the plaid, you can't see any evidence that the thing that we've engineered it, right? So the engineering is all going to be out of sight under the collar. And that also means, because the problem with shoulder plaids, originally they were just a loop onto a shoulder button. You'd have a button on one shoulder, and it would just be buttoned on like that. This more ornate Victorian kind was really designed to pass under an epaulette. And you'd see coats with just one epaulette. But epaulettes, they've fallen out of fashion, and with good reason, I think. The problem is, in the absence of an epaulette, if he ever leans across a table or bends over in front of somebody, the whole plaid will just fall forward off their arm, off their shoulder, and land in somebody's plate of food. I've seen that. So yeah, those hooks will prevent that. So right now what we're going to do is we're going to make that. So I'm just going to get my coat out of the way. That one, incidentally, that's a very nice one. That coat was made by Kinloch Anderson, and I was impressed with their online measuring, and I ordered one, and it's done good work. It's a little bit beat up now. It's sort of my working coat. It'll be the one that I wear when I'm going out in the rain and knocking about in. That doesn't reflect the tailoring or anything else. It's just I have several bespoke coats. That one is off the rack, altered slightly, so it's the one that I can bash around in. Okay, so let's find everything. This is a bit funny because I've dropped that piece of cloth. Where on earth did it go? Oh no, it's right in front of me the whole damn time. Okay, so remember, that's the look we're going for. So I measured the piece of cloth. I still have 2 yards left because knowing that he wanted a dress plaid in addition to his kilt, but because he designed this tartan, and I knew what the numbers represented about how big the set was. This is a rather large set. This is 7 inches. I ordered a bit of extra cloth because I'd rather be half a yard over than even 6 inches under. It turns out that I'm 2 yards over, and I have a plan about what we can do with that. So this was still attached to the roll when I measured this. So what I did was I chose what the center element of the front fall will be. Finding this one again. You can see for this I chose the red on black because that's actually the front apron, I think, is centered on that, and my Stuart kilt is knife pleated to that. So in this case, I mean, otherwise, generally I'll go for the primary element, shall we say, and in this case the yellow is slightly more overpowering, shall we say. It's slightly more dominant than is the red, but we've pleated to the red, so I'm going to center that plaid fall on the red. So I've just lined up my straight edge and made a couple of chalk marks. Now, and then having made that, I says, okay, well, let's cut it here. So I cut and tore it there to separate this piece from the rest, which I rolled up and stuck back on the shelf. So at this point, I have gone overboard in the past by wrong. Let's rephrase that. In the past, I have fringed all four edges of the front fall, but because this plaid is only fringed across the width, it's not fringed on either side because we've got, as I mentioned elsewhere, we've got selvage edges on both edges, and that is just such a rare, desirable, distinguishing feature that I'm not going to mess with that. So in this case, I'm not going to touch that selvage edge. I'm going to fringe that edge out a bit, and this one as well. And I think, because there's my top, I think I'm going to cut it here, say there-ish. And fringe that out a bit. So at this point, I've taken it off the roll, I've marked, and I'm just going to see what it's going to look like. Yeah, okay, see, I can... See, I'm not able to fully imagine it with just folding without cutting this side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this second side. Now I'm going to start my cut at the top and rip the rest so that any bad angle in the cut won't be it'll be less obvious. Okay. Let's just get rid of these for the time being. Okay, there's the top, there's the bottom. And I'm folding that. I'm just sort of, I found a pin by running my finger into the pin box. It is a reliable way of picking out a pin. It hurts a little bit. Okay. Now there's no real hard and fast way to do this. I'm just monkeying about with it so that ideally, you can't see the crease, but I can feel it. The crease is coming as far as the center line. Maybe I can pleat it a second time. That might work. That looks kind of striking. And again. And again. Okay, I'm going in the right direction here. Okay. Let's tease those yarns out for a bit. Where's my backing quilting board? And a needle. And okay, so there's the top. Great thing about this cloth, because the thread count is so high, it's rather, again, densely packed. It's what we used to call a hard tartan, that you fringe it for a bit, and then eventually the edge becomes effectively self-sealing. See, look at that. It doesn't want to come out anymore. So I'm just going to tease that last yarn out. And what's that? About a pinky's width? Okay. Pinky's width is about there. Oh, come on. Again, the best cloth ever made. You know, it's getting there. I don't have to go as far as that pencil mark, or that chalk mark, I should say. Let's leave that for now. Let's do this side. That's all right. Okay. Ooh. Okay. Reverse. And again, I am really just kind of fiddling with it here. I think that looks right. It's not symmetric here for length, but that's just the cloth telling me where it wants to go. Now, where's my remaining piece of cloth? Here's that top band. Remaining bit of top band. Rather than cut into this, if I cut a chunk out of this, I can't think of anything I can use for the rest of the piece. So the whole piece eventually becomes waste if I cut off one piece. I think I'll just give it to the client, and he can perhaps come up with something he can make out of it. So there's our St. Andrew's cross, so to speak. And That'll be sewn here. We'll tuck this under the piece like so, and sew it like that, and then put the placket, St. Andrew's cross placket on top of that, just like that. And I think, let's cut it a bit large to start off with, because we can always take cloth off. Okay. Put that back in the out pile. I think what I'm going to do there, I've kind of pinned it together a bit cheap and cheerful. Or at least it will be when I get the final pin in. That. Now, let's ignore that thing sticking, that excrescence. Let's ignore that for a second. But making sure that it's oriented the right way, that the plaid doesn't wind up twisted when it's time to put it on. So therefore, that's our spot. And that's our spot. And then that will go like that, so that the twill of the placket matches the twill of the cloth. Those tiny little bits of attention to detail that make the difference. And then all sewn together. Now, as far as keeping this shape, there's two ways to go about it. And one of them is to sort of prick stitch, which is to say a back stitch that has the smallest amount of thread visible on the inside, and then it travels. So the back side advances however far, 1/2 inch, 3/4, whatever is best for the occasion, along the length to hold it sort of, you're pinning it with thread, as it were, or basting it with thread along its length. But the problem is you're going to see a row of dimples, right? The other way is to press it, which is what I did there. And that works okay too. What I'm going to do, I think, is I'm going to baste this with cotton thread so I can take the pins out, because were I to apply a hot iron to these plastic flowers, tragedy would ensue. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to baste this together, remove the pins, and then I'm going to press it from the back, but not the front, just to see how it turns out, because I like the soft fold. There isn't a hard crease there. This stuff is beautiful because I pressed that crease when I made this at least 25 years ago, and the crease is still really good. So this holds the crease forever, but I'm going to play with this a little bit because I kind of like the soft fold, because it's a little more natural, a little more authentic to a piece of cloth that's been pulled across the shoulder and allowed to hang in front. And it's not, we're not members of the Prussian army. It's not pressed all to hell and gone. So yeah, I'm going to do that. And therefore, I'm going to stop the vid while I'm doing that. And then I'll check in later as I'm sewing this all together. Actually, while I'm at it, let me just pull the kilt out so that I can do one video instead of two. Um, remember, I'd spotted that, as is so often the case, the gentleman has one hip higher than the other. I wonder if it's related, and a bunch of people immediately, and I'm not dissing you guys, but a bunch of people immediately wondered, "Oh my God, is this a debilitating medical condition?" It's not. When very few bodies are actually symmetrical. The ones that are, let's just call them Barbie and Ken, they're also not very interesting to look at. But if you go to a shoe shop, a real shoe shop with a real shoe salesperson, the places that have those wooden or aluminum gauges that they put your foot on, and they measure the width and the length of your foot. They will tell you, maybe they're not supposed to tell you, just from experience, because if you point out an imperfection in somebody's body, they can get upset or concerned. But they will tell you that you're going to have one foot, in many cases, one foot slightly larger than the other, and therefore they fit the shoe. They'll select a pair of shoes that's fitted to the larger foot, right? Also, musculature. We've already pointed out that my dominant hand, my left hand, my hand span is almost an inch wider than my right hand span. My grip is stronger on this side. I have heavier musculature on the right side from a lifetime of exercise and frankly hard physical labor. It affects the body, and not only in the muscle department, but also your bones. I mean, they talk about you may have heard of the skeleton salvaged from the Mary Rose wreck, and they were able to determine that many of these skeletons were archers because of the effect of drawing a very heavy bow head on their physiology over their life, that the bones on one side were heavier, and that the muscle attachments, I forget the learned phrase for it, were different as well. So you're going to get this. I have, because I paddle as well as row, the long muscles in my back are deeper on the left side than the right. I habitually step off with my left foot, whether it's marching or walking, but also climbing stairs or going over obstacles, and that has created slightly more muscular definition on my left leg, where the top muscles of my thigh are contracting to pull me up, but also clear muscular development on my right, which is pushing off. And I think perhaps that is the reason for it. Or your pelvis could actually be, I don't know, 1/8 of an inch out of true. It doesn't matter. If people go through their entire lives not knowing this is the case, but if you talk to a tailor, they'll routinely make a note of someone who's doing bespoke tailoring, at least, somebody whose shoulder's a little higher on one side or anything else. So here we are. So back to it. Remember, I decided that I was going to drop the strap and buckle on the right hip. So I've dropped the strap from 2.5 down to, I think I said it was 3. Yeah, 3 1/4. So I dropped it 3/4 of an inch. Well, the time came to drop the buckle on the right hip 3/4 of an inch, and of course that immediately caught my eye, and I wasn't pleased. I reacted and went, that doesn't look good. Which is why I've asked the client to come by. He's going to come by on Saturday afternoon, and we're going to fit it to him. And if this solves I'm not going to call it a problem, but if this solves the irregularity, if it makes the kilt hang so that these lines are truly vertical, I'm going to see what he thinks about it, because frankly, it does improve the comfort of the kilt somewhat, because I've noticed myself that my left side is slightly higher. The crown of my left hip is slightly higher than my right. I adjusted the straps and buckles. The kilt fits better, and it looks better. It really looks ugly when it's laying on the table, but when the person's wearing it, you're not going to see both those buckles at the same time, are you? If it's stupid and it works, it isn't stupid. The other thing to mention here is that we see some waviness across the back here, and that's as a result of the box pleating. Even the box pleating ends here. There's a transition point, but I think we're going to find that when he's wearing it, as the kilt is actually radius to his hips, that those valleys are going to disappear. And if they don't, well, I'm just going to have to resew them, aren't I? I've left the tack of an X on the middle pleat because that's going to help me when we're doing that fitting. With this, I can tell at a glance that the kilt is correctly centered because this pleat will be in line, centered on his back. And that just makes it a little quicker for me to see that. That'll come out after that fitting. So yeah, Saturday, we'll see if this works and see if he's content with it. If he doesn't like the look of this, I'll move it back, and then we'll see what effect that's had on the fit. But again, this is experimental. I haven't heard of anyone else doing this before me. I'm still finding my way through with it. Let's see how it goes. Oh, here's the last thing too. You may be able to see is our two little eyes sewn there for the plaid to hang from. Okay, good. I'm going to sign off now and actually get back to work instead of talking about working. And I'll check in with you later. Okay, once again, motion sickness alert. Close your eyes. Oh, there's the phone.